There's a really good self-help book that I was reading. I think it's like one of the most, I don't want to make no false claim, but he talked about how like this book and this concept came out a long time ago. It's called the Psycho-Cybernetics. I've heard lots of people who are like into self-improvement, personal development talk about this book, even like the top gurus, right? And one of the main topics in this book is the idea of self-image. And the way he explains it is like a way that I never even thought about it. Like when you think of self-improvement, personal development, you're like, oh, I need to get rich, I need to get fit, I need to get girls, I need to get smart, I need to get all these skills, right? But like the basis of the book is so scientifically like it makes sense scientifically, right? The idea of self-image being exactly what you need to accomplish what you want to accomplish, and like it ties back to the idea of like affirmations. Like if for me, when I heard people say like affirmations, like I know like Logan Paul used to say affirmations, and like I think Jake Paul and like all these other people who are like in like successful positions, and I like when they would say in their videos like, oh, I used to wake up every day and say I'm gonna be the biggest YouTuber, or I'm gonna be the richest guy, this and that. I'm like, how does that fucking help you, right? But because they're in those positions, I can't judge against it, right? They obviously, something that they did obviously worked, and if it was the affirmation, they genuinely believe it, it makes sense, right? And like for a long time, I didn't believe in affirmations, and I didn't use them myself. But when I read this book about self-image, the whole idea of affirmation makes sense, because what he talks about is your self-image is obviously how you view yourself and the way you view the world. And so if you believe yourself to be some regular, smegular guy, doesn't really hit girls, doesn't do this and that, right? Has a regular job, has a regular life, then you're obviously gonna succumb to that, right? Not because you want that, but because that's what you believe you are to be, right? And how he explains this is like, if you've ever, like, how do I explain it? Like, oh, the book is so good. Like, if you read that whole chapter, it's such a long, big chapter, and it's so fast. I read it a while ago, but then I was watching a video, like, reviewing it. But the idea is, like, if you become who you believe you are, right? If you believe, like, in one of the book, right? One of the things he explained, which was, like, it really clicked for me, it was, like, this guy and his brother would always talk shit about each other, right? No, the guy would always talk shit about his brother, right? At all family dinners, everything, right? And when the guy died, the brother died, right? The guy he always talk shit about, he completely stopped talking shit about him, right? And like, you know, he would question him. He was like some other guy, right? Who was like, oh, why you stop talking shit about your brother? I thought you hated him, this and that, whatever. He's like, I never speak ill of the dead, right? And he believed himself to be someone who never spoke ill of the dead. And so after the guy died, he stopped talking shit about him. Even though he still hated him, he still didn't care for him, none of that, right? So in theory, nothing changed, right? The guy was still the guy. Nothing changed in the past. He still hated him, everything, right? But because he believed himself to be someone who doesn't speak ill of the dead, he stopped doing it, right? Like, if that example makes sense, like, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. But it's like, that's just one aspect. If you just tell yourself, say you have a regular 9 to 5 job and you have like some like ugly girlfriend or whatever, right? Your life sucks, you play video games all day and you do this and that, right? If you tell yourself, yeah, this is the type of life I'm supposed to live. Like, I grew up this way, and my parents didn't teach me this and that, and my life, I'm too ugly to get a better looking girlfriend, right? You believe yourself to be a guy of like low substance or whatever, right? But if you told yourself, if you didn't have all these limiting beliefs that like, I can be the guy who becomes rich, I can be the guy who gets that 10 out of 10 girl, I can be the guy who learns any skill he puts his mind to, right? If you believe yourself to be this type of guy, you will become that type of guy, because your mind looks for ways to prove itself. And so like, another example for me personally, right? Sometimes I go into the gym, and like I go to the gym 5 days a week, and I used to go 7, and every day I would see some consistent people who would come the same days I would go, or I would see like people I've never seen before, like maybe on a Saturday or Sunday when people would, or like on a holiday. And sometimes I would go in there and I would always like, I always do this thing where I'm like, this is a weird set of people, right? And I would say this every single time I would see some people who were relatively weird in terms of like, I'd never seen them before, right? They weren't weird, they're just strange for me to see. And I wouldn't say it on days where I would see the regular people, right? But even on the days where I saw the weird set of people, there was still a bunch of people who I saw on a regular basis. It wasn't really weird, right? But I would be like, oh, look, I've never seen this guy before. He's weird, he's strange, right? And it's like, because I told myself it's a weird set of people, I look for ways to prove it, right? And it's like, now when I'll go into the gym, right? And I'll be like, before I even go in, I'll be like, I feel like today's gonna be an interesting set of people. And of course, I go in there, I'm like, oh, I've never seen the person, they're interesting. I've never seen them. It's like, your mind looks for ways to prove itself true, because in the book they talk about like how your mind is like a self-serving mechanism. and it looks for success, right? Like he talks about how like God created all of us, not in order for us to like fail. Why would you create something in order for? It's like, imagine you created a product or like some type of book or something, right? You created something and you never create something in order for it to fail. You create it in order for it to succeed and solve problems and this and that, right? And that's why God created us, right? To become successful, solve problems. So naturally our brain is meant to succeed. And so if you feed your brain the right tasks, like he talks about, it will look for ways to succeed, right? And so if you tell yourself something, you'll naturally look for ways to prove it. So it's like a part of like the halo effect. Like if you ever tell yourself, oh yeah, red cars are kind of rare, but then if I told myself red cars are kind of rare today and I went outside and I started driving, I would notice every single red car, because now your mind is looking for it, right? Your mind looks for ways to prove itself or whatever, right? And it's like there's so many examples of this, but it's like I found myself, like if you read that book, it'll change your life because you start seeing everything so differently. And he talks about things like back to the whole affirmation thing. Like if you tell yourself, like I don't know what affirmation Logan Paul used, but he said that like he wanted to be the biggest YouTuber in the world, right? And if he told himself every morning that I'm gonna be the biggest YouTuber in the world, like as he said he would do in the mirror or whatever, eventually either you can say he became that or not, but if he believed himself to be it, he was gonna do whatever it took to prove that statement, because his brain and body believed it, because he kept telling himself, that's the person I am. I'm the biggest YouTuber in the world. I'm the biggest YouTuber in the world. So now your body and brain does what type of things the biggest YouTuber in the world would do. And it justifies the things that like might be hard or might be scary for other people to do, but it was normal for you because you affirmed it within yourself. And so like that's like the whole idea that's like successful people will tell you, like never talk negative about yourself, only have positive self-talk. And it's not like of course problems will occur, negative things will happen, right? People die, taxes happen, expenses happen, all these things that are like negative will happen. But if you tell yourself, like say you start up a business and it didn't go well, right? You were not profitable, you broke even, whatever. If you were to say I'm a failure because this business failed, that's you having negative self-talk, and it just makes no sense, because the business itself is just an entity. It's just a thing, right? Because it failed, it has nothing to do with you. Just because you worked on it, it was just an experiment, right? Experiments fail, scientists fail, everybody fails, right? Problems happen. It's a part of life, right? But you needed to fail in order to like there was no way you were just gonna like say you created a product or whatever and it failed. Just because you created it doesn't mean that you're a failure. The entity itself was a failure, and that's it, right? There's no connection to you and you being a failure. You need to another thing they talk about in the book is like course correct, where it's like if you fail or make a mistake, you course correct and then you change something and then you try again. Then you try again until it works, right? That's the whole point of like making an invention and making something work, right? Even with yourself, like if you take a test and you fail, like the first test of the class or whatever, you course correct, you study, you make sure you pay attention in class. The next time you probably will do a little bit better. And if you fail again, you obviously need to do something else, course correct, change it, then you probably will succeed. Nonetheless, right? You need to not have negative self-talk, because it makes you believe that that's the type of person you are. If you tell yourself, oh, I'm a failure because this thing failed, now you literally just told your own brain that I'm a failure, and it's going to look for other ways to fail, or it's just going to justify every failure that you have. But if you tell yourself, this product failed, but I'm going to keep trying until I get a successful product or whatever, right? Then your brain's going to be like, okay, we're going to work on that. We're going to start doing that. It's a self-serving mechanism, right? So because you fed it the right task, now you're just going to keep going. You're going to keep retrying, keep changing course until something succeeds. And that's why the whole point of like affirmations, positive self-talk, even like envisioning yourself. Envisioning yourself is a whole nother chapter, I feel like, in the book. But I think it still ties into self-image, where it's like, if you can envision yourself doing something hard or whatever, it'll happen. And so like if you can envision yourself working on that business, if you can envision yourself in the gym working out, if you can envision yourself approaching and talking to that girl, it will happen. Because as soon as it happens in your brain, it makes it that much more easy in real life, because now you're not like nervous. I think he literally goes into detail about this in the book, but it's like the first time things happen where it's like you're nervous or you're scared or this and that, once it's played out in your head, now it's not the first time anymore. It's not like there's no like nothing tied to it, like first time jitters or nothing. It's like, oh, this already happened. And if you keep doing it in your head, he really talks about, it's like experience. Alex Hormozi talks about how the more times you get experience in something, the less nervous and the better you become at it, because you're just so accustomed to doing it, right? And in the book, the guy talks about how your brain cannot tell the difference between real life and what's happening in your brain. So if you were to practice something in your head constantly, you're getting more experience. You're getting more experience, so that when it happens in real life, you're not as nervous, because it technically in your brain already believes that this happened already a multiple amount of times, because you practice in your head. He talked about it as like a guy who played the piano, who would he would practice the keys in his head, and when it came to actually playing, he was naturally that much more better, because it was already being played in his head, like the notes or whatever. Nonetheless, read the book if you really want to go into like all the little details, but being able to envision things that you're scared to do or nervous to do is a perfect way to get your image like acquainted to the idea of doing it, and it makes it that much easier. So it's like, work on your self-image by having positive self-talk, having affirmations, work on it being like envisioning stuff. And like envisioning things sound like really scary and hard to do, and it quite is, because you gotta almost like think of concepts that you're scared to do and then envision yourself doing it. And it's like sometimes it becomes hard to like do, but you almost have to like, the best way to do it is like, he even talks about it in the books, like imagine yourself in a movie theater, you're sitting in the middle row in the seat or whatever, and the movie starts playing, but it's you. The movie is you doing whatever hard task, whether it's you approaching a girl in the gym, or you at home working on the business online, or it's, you know, going up to your boss and asking for a raise. Like whatever it is, imagine all the characters on the screen, imagine exactly how it plays out, and just keep watching that same movie over and over and over again until you become accustomed to it, and seeing what did you do in that movie, what made you actually succeed, why were you nervous in the beginning. Because most things that you're nervous for is like, it's really just first time jitters. After you do it, you're like, oh, it wasn't even that scary. Nonetheless, read the book, practice self imagery, practice visions, watch how your life changes.